The media announces with fanfare and fireworks an unprecedented feat, the first all-women commercial spaceflight, headlined by none other than Katy Perry. It's framed not as a casual space tourism stunt, but as a milestone in human history. The rhetoric is powerful: female empowerment, cosmic spirituality, unity, strength, sisterhood. Hashtags explode across social media. News outlets cover it like it's Apollo 11 all over again. But when the big day comes, the spacecraft barely leaves the atmosphere. It floats in zero gravity for 4 minutes, the entire trip lasting 11 minutes. That's it. And the world is left asking, was that seriously the whole thing? Worse yet, it wasn't marketed as a light-hearted, fun experience. It was sold as a historic leap for humankind. What followed was an avalanche of criticism. Memes, sarcasm, and leading the charge was Megyn Kelly, who tore apart the narrative with a mix of irony and outrage. She didn't just question the event's scientific value. She questioned whether such spectacles advance women or hold them back. And just like that, the so-called female astronaut flight became a symbol of what happens when marketing overshadows reality. The flight was organized by Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos's space company, and promoted as a revolution in female inclusion in aerospace. For weeks, media campaigns praised the brave female crew, framing them as trailblazers for future generations. The mission, they claimed, would mark a turning point in the visibility of women in science. But reality came crashing. Down fast. This wasn't a scientific mission. It wasn't an orbital expedition. It wasn't even a technically demanding experience. It was a suborbital flight, less than the duration of a Netflix episode, and contributed nothing to science, technology, or knowledge. What truly baffled many was the post-flight commentary. The participants, including Katy Perry and Gayle King, returned to Earth speaking in tones of spiritual awakening, cosmic energy, self-love, and divine vibrations. For many, this spiritual emotional language felt absurdly disconnected from the seriousness traditionally associated with space exploration. What began as a celebration of feminism devolved into a sort of emotionalized parody of what space travel should represent. Megyn Kelly was one of the first to dismantle the glossy narrative, cutting deep with surgical precision. She mocked the flight's scientific emptiness, the participants' lack of technical training, and the overly emotional tone that followed. "You're not Neil Armstrong because you floated for 4 minutes," she quipped. "What's next? Modeling? Spacesuits as empowerment couture?" Her takedown went viral, striking a chord with millions who felt the same way. The solemn media tone quickly flipped into a carnival of memes, parodies, and disbelief. Celebrities joined in. Olivia Wilde mocked Katy Perry kissing the ground as if she'd just returned from Mars. Fast food chains like Wendy's dropped sarcastic tweets. Suddenly, what had been hailed as a historic event for women now looked more like a tone-deaf branding stunt. Katy Perry's post-flight remarks didn't help. She described the flight as a near-meditative journey, comparing it to healing techniques like the Hoffman process and inner spiritual work. This, after 11 minutes in the air. Quotes like, "I put the Astro back in Astronaut," and "I'm so proud of myself I want to pierce my ears," were meme fodder within hours. The contrast between the lofty language and the limited scope of the experience left many people feeling duped. It no longer seemed like progress. It seemed like a luxury wellness retreat in disguise, accessible only to the elite. And that's where the empowerment narrative began to collapse. The message shifted from "any woman can go to space" to "if you're rich and famous, you can snap selfies in zero gravity." The real question emerged. Did this flight actually inspire girls to pursue science and engineering? Or did it just prove that fame and money can buy you even a symbolic astronaut badge? Because let's be clear, this wasn't a NASA initiative. There were no experiments, no new discoveries, no intense training, Just 2 days of prep and a quick loop above the Earth's edge. What it offered in style, it lacked in substance. If it had been sold as a celebrity space tourism experience, maybe there wouldn't have been such backlash. But by dressing it up as a transformative leap for humanity, it created expectations the reality couldn't meet. The fallout was brutal. What started with promises of future-changing significance became a textbook case of what happens when ideology and advertising overtake authenticity. Perhaps the most painful part for those who know the history of space exploration was the cheap comparison to true pioneers, women like Valentina Tereshkova, the first woman in space, 1963, Sally Ride, the first American woman in orbit, or Peggy Whitson, who spent 665 days off Earth. These women weren't chosen for Instagram followers. They trained for decades, faced death, and made real contributions to science. Comparing Katy Perry to them felt not just absurd, but deeply disrespectful. Ultimately, this flight revealed something crucial. Representation without depth doesn't build progress. It empties it. It turns empowerment into parody. And in the era of digital feedback, the internet was unforgiving. Clips of Perry floating were remixed with spa music. YouTubers labeled the trip "Keeping Up with the Cosmonauts." The verdict from the audience wasn't awe or respect. It was laughter, eye rolls, and a sense of betrayal. And Katy Perry, who had spent years reinventing herself as a pop provocateur and spiritual icon, didn't walk away unscathed. What looked like a bold branding move cracked her public image. Her post-flight performance, kissing the ground, speaking in mystic cliches, wasn't seen as empowering. It was seen as disconnected, performative, even ridiculous. In the end, this wasn't a mission, it was a production. A meticulously choreographed show wrapped in emotional sound bites and grandiose headlines. A shiny illusion of progress, because real female astronauts don't float for 4 minutes and call it transformation. They train for decades, live, in extreme isolation, and put their lives at risk. They open doors with discipline, science, and sacrifice, not marketing. That's the real legacy of women in space, and no amount of hashtags can fake that.